All right. Well, thank you all for joining. So today is the first session that we're planning for this year on AI. Alexandra and I are planning kind of a whole series on different topics this year. It seems to be a pretty hot topic, right? I think more and more everyone's talking about it in the industry. People are adopting it to very varying levels, right? Both firm-wide on projects or individually in their workflows. And one of the reasons we decided to start off with this topic related to security is because I know it's definitely something I've seen as being, if not like a barrier to entry, but definitely a hurdle, especially with clients or projects, public clients and projects, and where we're handling sensitive information in some cases. We have to be very careful about what we put into some of these AI models, what is truly private, what's secure, what are the things we should be thinking about, what are the risks, best practices. We've done a lot of internally in our office, we've been talking about this a lot. So we're lucky today to have Scott Larsen here from the Larsen Kufal Group, and he's a leader in information technology and cybersecurity. He's been at it for 25 years in a variety of business sectors and government sectors. So I think we're really lucky to have him here to talk to us on this subject. And so he's going to present for like 25 minutes at the beginning, and then we'll have time for questions and answers and discussion. So definitely, as you're listening, jot down your questions, and we'll have time for that at the end. But I wanted, before we get rolling with Scott, I kind of want to ask the group and get a sense of what people are using AI for now, or have you been too afraid to jump into it? Like, I know in our office, definitely we're using it a lot to like edit text, revise text, give us suggestions for difficult emails we're writing, things like that. But I know we actually also, as an office, for sure, been sending around this YouTube video of a COO forum where Jeff Woods spoke at, and his kind of idea that he was presenting was using AI as more of a thought partner, which is very thought provoking, I have to say. If you can find it on YouTube, worth a watch. Some people are using it more as like a super Google search, kind of for research, things like that. It's starting to use it for maybe helping with design iterations. I've heard some of. We haven't really done that as an office. So I'm curious what you all have seen in your offices. Are you all using it? Feel free to unmute and
Hi, my name is Gabriela. There's several of us here from UTL. Hi, Alexandra. Good to see you. Um, I think are really trying to just understand and formalize what our stance is as a firm. I think many of us are on the same boat, right? We've done a couple of trials with some of the language that we use to describe our work and, iterations of design ideas, but it's all been very trial basis at this point and nothing really outside of just our internal practice.
sure. Anyone else want to? Alexandra, actually, I'm curious. I don't think you and I have really even talked about this. What you guys have been up to at HMFH?
It's not something I've jumped into yet. I've done some reading, but haven't been exploring it in design work. So excited to sort of understand, I think, what some of the parameters might be that you want to put on it and really dig a little more into this topic.
Sure. All right.
I know, I know that some of us, from an IT perspective, although I'm not in IT, I'm the project accounts manager for HMFH. I know there was some concern that on Zoom meetings and different kinds of platforms where we meet, there's concern about the information that AI is capturing. I know we've signed in and it says like a blurb, this is being recorded for AI. Again, what Gabriella was saying is trying to understand the parameters of AI, how they're interjected into the business, and what information is being captured and where is it going.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Tracy. it came up actually with one of our public clients, has blanket said, like, we do not allow AI, like meeting recorders or meeting note takers, like flat out do not use them on any of our projects. You guys might have heard similar things. I think we might share some similar clients here. So yeah, it's just interesting. Yeah. I mean, that was definitely a very clear message about their stance on it. I think they're primarily concerned with like biases and security as far as the information that gets recorded, right? But yeah, so for that reason, we haven't really jumped into the meeting like assistant apps or anything too much, but I feel like those have so much opportunity. But okay, well, thank you guys for chiming in. With that, I think, Scott, I'll hand it over to you to kind of dive in and start giving us kind of an overview, and we'll go from there.
Okay, and I'll be sharing my screen in a moment. Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be here with you. This is a very important topic, as we already are aware. I hope you'll gain some insights and some understandings as I present this and how it relates to maybe doing your work. I wouldn't call myself an expert on AI. I have been dabbling in it since the late 90s, early 2000s. Give you a little bit of background, and I thank Rosalind for kind of introducing me. I'm a cybersecurity executive. I have over 30 years of experience in information technology and cybersecurity. I've also led large teams at several large healthcare systems, and have been an adjunct professor for over 25 years in computer science. I currently head up my own company, Larsen Kufal Group. Also, I'm the president emeritus, chairman emeritus, and founder of the Michigan Healthcare Cybersecurity Council. Our company provides cybersecurity, information technology, and data analytics services to our clients. And one of our clients is SAM Group, and we're SAM Architecture. We're happy to do that. And so if you like what you're hearing, maybe there's more discussion we can have. I'll give a little sales pitch at the end. But at any rate, we'll go ahead, and I planned about 30 minutes or so. I'm going to leave plenty of time for discussion. I'm not one to drone on. I don't like reading my slides. I have notes I'll work off of. And if you have questions, capture those. We'll have plenty of time at the end. And, I'll try to keep it at a level that is not Klingon, it's plain English. And sometimes we techies are talking different languages. So let me share my screen right now, and we'll kick this off. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep, I see it.
Securing client data with artificial intelligence. So, as an introduction, we need to set context. So here, you can read this as well as I can. Architecture projects often involve proprietary designs, contracts, and personal client information. We need to handle it securely. Our objective for me here today is to equip project managers with insights using AI and doing that securely, protecting client data, et cetera. Particularly in the aspect of integrating AI into your workflows, and then give you some strategies on how you can mitigate security risks and enhance your compliance. So there's 3 reasons why this matters. AI enables efficiency, as some of us have already discovered, but as has also been mentioned earlier today, improper handling of the data of clients can present security risks and sometimes breaches. When we protect the sensitive information of our clients, we build trust, and that also helps us comply with various regulations such as GDPR, CCPA, et cetera. And I would argue if you can't protect your clients' data, your business is going to suffer. That's just kind of a given. So keep that in mind. Second, AI tools can streamline tasks such as project planning, cost estimations, design simulations, because those also require access to sensitive client data. And lastly, as I mentioned, breaches can result in reputational damage, financial impacts, and potential legal consequences and sanctions. So there's some common misconceptions about AI. That it can think like a human and it's unbiased, it'll eliminate jobs. The argument there is if your job can be reduced to a set of instructions, yeah, an AI can do that. AI can be biased because it's based on the data that it's trained on. These large language models are only as good as the data that they're provided. Another misconception is it can think like a human. AI processes information different than the human brain does. There are some similarities, but they're totally different. AI will create new jobs with different requirements rather than eliminating existing ones. Think of it this way, and I'm old enough to tell you guys this. I was in college when the internet became a thing, okay? And there were folks at that time that were not gonna adopt this new technology. Said, I have a telephone, and I can do it, pencil and paper and typewriters and all that. Well, guess what? They got left behind. AI is the same thing. We need to embrace it. We need to do it smartly and securely because it's the next generation of our technical kind of evolution, I guess I'll call it. Some say AI is unethical. Some people have this dystopian vision of this robots uprising and Terminator and things like that. Using AI is cheating. A lot of the higher ed right now and even K through 12 are grappling with how do we ensure that the students are actually doing the work because they facilitate plagiarism. Well, guess what? You can use AI to combat that as well. So there's it's a double-edged sword there. And AI is only for robots. Well, that's not true. AI is a set of algorithms and computer programs, not just physical machines. Some more other misconceptions. AI can learn on its own. It can't. It needs data. AI can surpass human intelligence in all areas. Not really, not a chance. Human intelligence created it. It's only useful in tech industries. Well, we all know that's not true. Everybody's using it, from your bank to Google searches and you name it. Were you doing, I had a Read AI here loaded up on this meeting before I removed it. That was going to transcribe this entire meeting. AI is only useful in tech industries. That's not true. Can only be used by technically skilled people. Again, the evolution becomes more and more user-friendly as we go. AI can adding AI to your business guarantees productivity. Not necessarily. If you're not using it right, it could create more problems, right? So, let's start with that. All right. So I got this graphic and this information from the Carlson School of Management at the University of Minnesota. They're doing a lot of work in this AI. Oh, shoot. Sorry. You're still there?
Yep.
Oh,
it's your beautiful background.
hold on. Something broke here.
No problem.
I was rolling too.
I know you were on a roll.
We're back.
There we go. We're back.
Let's see if I can get back to my. Okay, there we go. Oh, no, I don't want that. All right. All right. Carlson School of Management. That's where we left off. It's got 5 myths that we want to debunk. And since the emergence of ChatGPT, it's been very disruptive. It dominates the news cycle. Ravi Batma, he's an AI scholar at University of Minnesota, and he talks about these common ideas and debunking these myths. So here's number one: artificial intelligence is ChatGPT. That's not true. That's a myth. It's an AI model. Like ChatGPT, it's used by OpenAI, which is the AI behind ChatGPT. It encompasses a wide range of technologies and applications, including machine learning that use predictive analytics and natural language processing and robotics. Two, all AI, machine learning, and deep learning are all the same thing. That's a myth. Machine learning, artificial intelligence, and deep learning are separate terms. They refer to distinct, different concepts in the overall field of AI. What is artificial intelligence? We should probably define these things as we're talking about them, right? General term referring to the discipline of creating machines or programs that use data to solve problems or make decisions like humans. We've been using this for some time. How many of you use Google search? Everybody. Netflix, TikTok, Spotify, YouTube, they all use AI algorithms. Human speech assistants like Alexa and Siri are all AI based. Machine learning is a way to use AI. It lets the computer learn without providing explicit instruction on how to learn. It can use data to explain what happened, to predict what will happen, suggest an action, etc. This method always requires monitoring and human intervention. Humans are needed to manually label data sets used for training and to write the machine learning algorithms to process the data sets. Keep this idea of data sets in your mind as we go forward, because that's going to be important to a later discussion we're going to have. And it goes on, what is deep learning and neural networks? I'm not going to go through all of these, but as you can see from the graphic, the foundations for analysis, the cleaning, the integration, the aggregation, that's what we have to do to get the AI ready for the next phase, which is the descriptive, predictive, causal, and prescriptive, and so forth. And I'm not going to read through it. As you see, it goes up till we have an AI-powered society, but there's a lot of things that have to happen in place before that occurs. Okay. Give me some statistics on AI and importance of the prevalence of breaches. So 77% of companies have experienced breaches in their AI systems over the past year. So there's vulnerabilities associated with the integration of AI into their systems. 61% of IT leaders acknowledge that the presence of shadow, unsanctioned AI solutions not officially controlled by the IT department within their organizations and are posing significant security risks. I think one of you mentioned this before, that there's stuff going on that IT doesn't know about. That's a big problem. There's also financial impact that occurs when we're talking about AI. The average cost of a data breach reached an all-time high of $4.8 million in 2024, marking a 10% increase from 2023. Organizations utilizing AI and automation in their security infrastructure reported $1.8 million lower data breach costs compared to those without such technology. So kind of an arms race, right? To combat the AI, we need AI in our security programs. So we want to make sure that you IT leaders are really working with your security officers to say, hey, are you guys integrating AI into your tool sets? Because that's going to lower those breach costs significantly. There's obviously an increase in cyber threats that leverage AI. Cybersecurity professionals have observed a 1,265% surge in phishing emails and a 967% increase in credential phishing attempts since late 2022. all attributed to AI-driven threats. So they just raised the game tremendously with AI in those impacts. Amazon themselves reported encountering approximately 750 million cyber threat attempts daily, a significant rise from 100 million earlier in the year, partly due to advances in AI used by cyber criminals. Fourth, the data breach statistics in architecture industry are limited. We don't have a lot of data for firms like yours, but we're obviously not immune to those threats, right? As we increase digitization of design process and reliance on AI tools, that's going to make us a bigger target, which underscores the need for additional security measures. And last one, number 5, as we project this growth of costs by 2025, and we're already here, so the global cost of cybercrime is projected to reach 10.5 trillion, growing at a rate of 15% annually. So we definitely, have to have these adequate protections in place. Let's go to the next one. So we have some definite concerns, and some were mentioned in our initial discussion we had as Rosalind kicked us off. There's data privacy, data minimization, encryption standards, system vulnerabilities, secure access control, and data anonymization. Let's talk about those a little bit. Under data privacy and compliance, there are several aspects we need to be aware of. We need to understand and adhere to applicable privacy laws. GDPR, in particular, is one of the most stringent privacy laws on the planet. We need to research and comply with the global and regional data protection laws, such as we mentioned GDPR, California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. And we also need to work with our legal teams to review data sharing agreements to ensure compliance. Lastly, to ensure data handling aligns with confidentiality agreements. When you're dealing with vendors, you're going to have a vendor security questionnaire that you're going to want to make sure that they're using adequate security controls as well. I don't know if you guys are doing that, but it's something that I can help you with. Data minimization. Limit the data collection only was necessary for the task. Nothing more. Be very stringent on the data that you collect to use it. And avoid storing sensitive data unless it's absolutely required. Only collect, process, and store data that is absolutely necessary. It's not only a concern for AI, but it's also a concern for your data retention requirements, especially if you retain data for longer than you need to, and there's a lawsuit that comes up, you're going to have to supply that information, whereas you didn't need to keep it as long as you did. So that it needs to coordinate with your data retention policies. Some strategies. Use predefined filters to exclude non-essential information, and regularly purge outdated or unnecessary data from your systems. And that's not a trivial task, but you need to have processes set up to keep that data clean. Encryption standards are also a control that help us protect our data. We need to encrypt our sensitive data at rest and in transit while it's going over a network. We need to use secure protocols like HTTPS, TLS version 1.3, and AES 256 encryption. You don't need to know that. Your IT folks and your security people know that. You can just say, hey, I need these. Okay, and they'll say, yeah, they know what you mean. Data in transit, as we said, secure communication between systems, especially externally. And data at rest, where it's stored in databases and cloud on servers, encrypt that data while it's being stored. Also implement encryption key management policies to avoid unauthorized access. Just like with your laptop, your desktops, you have vulnerabilities that you need to be patching against from day to day. So again, the AI models need to be assessed for vulnerabilities, need to be updated to protect against attacks. And then we need to monitor and detect and respond to any anomalies or anything unusual that comes up. By doing that, we can test our AI models against attacks and use techniques such as training to harden those models against those threats. For secure access control, everybody have heard of role-based access control? Raise your hand if you have. Yeah. Role-based access control gives you security based on the job that you have, that you need to have the minimum least privilege of security to do your job and no more. Multi-factor authentication, raise your hand if you're using MFA anywhere. Yeah, see, thank you. If you've got a bank, guess what, right? They're going to send you that code and you're going to use your phone and you're going to enter it, right? Three-factor, multi-factor authentication, very important. If you're not using it on your systems, do it today, because I'm telling you, it'll cover a multitude of sins. It'll help you gain some higher security profile. And also with that, make sure you're reviewing the permissions regularly to update any user permissions that people move from one job to another. For example, you're going to want to say, hey, do they need those same permissions? Okay. All right. And lastly, data anonymization. You want to anonymize the data that's not the actual production data that you're using. You can change the names, you can mask it. It's still going to act the same in the AI, but you're not giving away the keys to the kingdom, all your actual data. So those definitely work with your database administrators on how we can mask that data that we're using for these AI systems. Okay, some best practices. We want to make sure that our deployment is ethical, that the decision-making it uses is explainable, it's unbiased, and it's transparent, so we can understand how it's providing those decisions. We need to regularly audit our AI models for fairness and accuracy. You've heard of this term hallucination. Sometimes these AIs can hallucinate and they give you erroneous information or just make stuff up. You know, if you play with ChatGPT or something, you can say, hey, write me a paper and give me 5 references for this particular topic I'm writing on. Oftentimes it'll give you references and it'll look like it's formatted right. It's an actual reference. But when you click on the link, it's nothing. It made it up. So make sure you're auditing and clearly understanding that's real data that it's pulling. There's some bias mitigation that we can use on our data sets. We need to train our models that, again, they're only as good as the data that we're providing, and we need to tune those. And then having an ethical governance framework within the organization. So I think that was also mentioned early on, is having some processes and policies and standards in place saying this is how we're going to use this, and it's going to require some thought. Data segregation and isolation. Separate out your sensitive data from your non. That's what we should be doing anyway, regardless of AI. Implement containerization to isolate the AI workloads themselves, put them in a place they're easier to manage that way. You can even use virtual environments. You can segregate them the same way in virtual. And like I said, isolate the workloads, particularly for critical systems. If you have critical systems, you want to treat those very carefully and isolate that AI workload. So if there's a problem with it, you know where to go to fix it. On secure data inputs and outputs, you need to validate your data that's coming in so you don't have what they call injection attacks. You've heard of SQL injection, right? Where they can send a command in on a web page that doesn't have data validation on the data input screen. Well, they can attack your databases that way. Mask or sanitize outputs to ensure sensitive information is not inadvertently revealed. Validate incoming data to prevent those attacks, as I said, and scrub the information, the sensitive information from your reports, AI-generated reports, before sharing them externally. That's going to be really important, because once it's out, it's gone. Once available on the internet, dark web, it's game over. You're never getting that back. Also, if you're familiar with computer software engineering and that there's life cycle management, same for AI. Update the latest security patches, monitor behavior for unintended consequences or vulnerabilities, and maintain a log of all the updates, modifications, and versions of AI models. That's going to be critical. People that are in IT understand this version control. It's very important. We want to also continually monitor our AI models for any drift in performance or behavior. There might be something that starts to drift one way or another. We want to make sure we capture that before it's out of hand. And just like we said earlier, patch management for all our systems is important. And you can include this in your regular corporate vulnerability management program that you already have for your other systems. Use secure platforms for sharing results or collaborating with teams. Don't use public or insecure tools that risk exposing your data. And use platforms that have built-in security features like encrypted file sharing and access controls. We want to manage our risk and mitigate as much as possible. Incident response plans, being a security professional, I'm very familiar with these. How many of you have actually done a test for participate in incident response planning or tabletop? Anybody? Raise your hand. Okay, one. Good. Well, there's opportunity here then. So for incident response plan, we need to develop and test a clear incident response strategy for all AI-related data breaches. So what if? Let's practice before we play. Need a plan. Develop roles and responsibilities for responding. It's better to have the plan before you actually need to use it and practiced it. And you can conduct tabletop exercises, simulate the breach and test your plan for improvement, modifications, what have you. And you want to include your some of your executives or higher level directors that they're fully aware because they're responsible for understanding risk. Okay. Conduct periodic audits and associated workflows. And if you need to, partner with third-party security experts to assess your vulnerabilities if your in-house staff needs assistance. Document your findings and implement remediations plans promptly. So if you don't have a risk register, something like that, you should have that developed because that way if an auditor comes in, whether it be federal or whoever, you can say, hey, here's our log, here's what we found, and then 30 days later, we fixed it. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. You got to have captured that risk item and share with the people that need to know what your remediation status is. Because again, boards of directors and executives are responsible for understanding cyber risk. Training and awareness. If you don't have a training program for security awareness, you really need to implement those. I headed up a program for another company here fairly recently. Very important. So train your members and your team on AI security risks and how to mitigate them. Raise awareness about phishing and social engineering attacks targeting AI platforms. You've heard this already, right? With email. It's the same idea. Okay. And provide training on those and update the staffs on new risks or security tools. So if something comes up, a new exploit, what have you, you communicate that. Okay. All right. So I got a couple examples. So bear with me here. I've got two case studies just to kind of like provide. Rosalind asked me to kind of come up with a couple that might be helpful to set the stage. So in this example, it's a successful implementation of a secure AI for an architectural data modeling. The scenario is an architecture firm securely used AI to model environmental impact assessments. Their key measures included data anonymization to protect the client details, role-based access to limit data exposure, and encryption of all AI-generated reports. Okay, first off, the phase 1, data preparation and security. So this initial phase involved collecting the data from various sources, such as, in this case, their building information modeling software, CAD drawings, sensor data, and potentially even hand-drawn sketches or scanned documents requiring OCR. Crucial here is ensuring data quality. Inaccurate or incomplete data can lead to flawed AI models and compromised security. Data cleansing involves identifying and resolving inconsistencies and errors and missing values. So this is something that AI can't do for you. You have to do this yourself. This step must adhere to strict data governance policies, ensuring compliance with privacy regulations, etc. Second part, data anonymization and encryption. So after you clean the data, before you feed it into the AI, that sensitive information should be anonymized, or as use the term, using a pseudonym or using pseudonyms. Techniques like differential privacy can add noise to the data while preserving statistical properties useful for AI training. Again, we mentioned encryption, both in transit and at rest. This protects from unauthorized access. Third, data access control. Implement a role-based access control system for different users like architects, engineers, contractors, and clients. They should only have access to the data and AI model functionalities that are relevant to their role and nothing more. This minimizes your risk of data breach or in some cases, accidental exposure. It can happen. Auditing capabilities are crucial to track data and access and modification events. So that's the first phase. All right. Phase 2, AI model development and deployment. Number 1, the selection of the model and training. You choose an AI model appropriate for the architectural task. So you might have structural analysis, energy efficiency prediction, space planning, etc. This might involve machine learning techniques like using neural networks for image analysis or time series data, or even using things like knowledge graphs for representing relationships between different architectural elements. Again, this is something out of my purview, so you guys are the experts on this. I'm just sharing with the elements that I captured from my research. You can train the model using the anonymized encrypted data, and retraining of the model is essential to account for updated data and evolving requirements. Model validation and verification is the second part of phase 2. Rigorous testing and validation are indispensable to ensure the accuracy, robustness, and reliability. And secure model, deploy the AI model within a secure environment. We've talked about that. Phase 3 is ongoing maintenance and monitoring. So, as we mentioned earlier, making sure that we're monitoring the performance, the drift, and make sure the patches are updated. So that is an example of just those 3 phases of a successful implementation of secure AI for architecture. Let me stop there. Does that kind of touching on some of the things that you guys do from a day-to-day basis? Was I hitting some of them there?
I think that hits on some of like the potential uses for like how we could see we might be using AI to help us do some analysis, and then thinking about like the actual application of some of the things you've been talking about, right? Like scrubbing the data we put in with, right, basically removing like client names, right, project names, project addresses, anything that's like identifying, right? So that
and you can use data masking to put in fake data. It's still going to give you this similar result, and then you'll be able to interpret from there. Okay. Good.
I saw Andrew just unmuted. Do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I did have one question. So like in the data anonymization strategy, so if you're using like online tools, for example, where you want to test out, if it's a sort of interior rendering that you want to test out different materials, and it's one of those like you upload an image to this online tool, and then it just generates all these different options for you. Most of them will require you to like sign in or like create an account, for example. So how do you sort of approach data anonymization in a sort of scenario like that?
So the security is only as good as who's storing the data.
Right.
So whoever your cloud provider is, what level of security they provide, and what those tools on that platform allow you to do. Okay.
Mhm.
So that's like, for example, using a thing like an Oracle database. They have tools built into that that let you anonymize or mask your data. So in that case, depending on what system you're using, again, I'm not familiar with all of them, but there are tools that will let you anonymize in different ways
Mhm.
to protect your data. So that's what you're ending up going to send to the AI. It's that anonymized, we always, in my years in IT, it was always the testing folks want to use live production data. And I'm like, time out, guys, you need to use test data.
Mhm.
Because if you have a problem, that's real data that you're impacting. That's
Right.
you want to do your testing well ahead of. So part of the answer to your question is having what they call a 3-tier development environment, that you have a development, QA, test, and prod, and you're going to anonymize that data through dev and test. You're going to use test data. You're not going to use actual data, but when it goes into production, you don't have a choice. That is your production system. You're going to use real data. So I'd say,
Right.
depending on what tools you're using, things like Oracle or Azure, they have different tools, and Microsoft, et cetera,
Mhm.
have. In fact, the ones that I was familiar with were you use like containerization with like Kubernetes. You've heard of that, or
Mhm.
AWS and Lambda, or Azure, like I mentioned, has different functions to enhance that security.
Got it. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Good questions. Okay. This next one, we have. Okay. The next one we're talking about is a case study from a data breach used to improper AI usage. I think we're running out of time here.
Yeah, yep. We got
Okay,
50.
let's say there was a breach and they didn't do a
Yeah.
security review, and they should have done it, and they should have updated their stuff.
Hmm.
Next question.
Mhm.
Which gets me to the last slide. So I want to leave. Yeah, I thought about that. I thought maybe 2 was too much. One's plenty. So conduct a security review of your current processes, implement best practices that we outlined. There's plenty of detail, and I'd be happy to help you with individually if you need more information. Schedule team training, develop a plan for data minimization, anonymization, training session for project managers on best practices, collaborate with IT to establish an incident response plan, and then regularly audit your system for vulnerabilities. Keep update. That is the end of the show.
Thanks. I definitely, as you were talking, I know we've been talking over the last couple of weeks, but even as you were doing this presentation, I jotted down some additional questions. But I guess before I jump in, does anyone have anything on their minds off the bat? All right. Oh, Tracy. All right.
I just had a quick question because our company, which I'm sure a lot of companies have WISP documents, and I'm wondering if there's some type of language or something that we should be incorporating into our WISP that has to do with security breach or AI data.
I think that's an excellent point. And you already in your WISP have language for security breaches and incident response, and this just gets tucked right into there. So it'd be like maybe an appendix to your overall WISP, and here's our AI security appendix that covers the governance around our AI implementation. So just like you would do on your others, like application security or network security or data privacy, you'd have all those as addendums or appendices to your overall WISP document or your plan documents like that. So definitely, I think that's something to add in there if it's not already required. And I have to look at ours. Rosalind, I don't remember that being part of ours, but I think we probably should talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know that we specifically talk about AI, but yep.
Something we could get ahead of anyway in the next
Yeah.
version. Yep. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Like I
I mean,
said,
I don't work in IT per se, but so I'm not really sure, you know, even if we did an appendix, I'm not really sure what type of language we would incorporate for that or even rolling it in. So any help would be greatly appreciated.
Happy to do it. You have you have my contact information. Please reach out. Be happy to
Yeah.
work with you one-on-one, and if that's what you want to do, happy to help. That's what
Thank
I'm
you.
here for. What I try to do is not only provide service, but I want to educate folks, because I want to take the mystery out of this stuff that a lot of technical professionals, they kind of throw jargon at you and it scare you and to make you feel like you're not this, up to date on something which you have no reason to be there. The professionals are supposed to share and teach you and help you understand and provide that data. So that's what I do. So feel free to reach out.
Thank you.
One question I feel like that's come up on a recurring basis in our office that I'm assuming other people have wondered as well. So can you trust when you're paying for an AI service, like a subscription, do you think it's, and I know we've talked about this, but what are your thoughts on being able to trust that they're not using that to train their AI models, which is what they often say, right? Like you pay for the subscription, you can turn off that setting.
Well,
And that's a measure for protecting client data, for example, right? But yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
so my answer to that is my answer to every question like that. It's depends on the fine print of that agreement, right? That license agreement. How many of you read your license agreements when you just click through and say, okay?
Yeah, accept.
That's where the game is won and lost. Now, I will agree with you that if you're talking about the free or open source version versus the one you pay for, yeah, you have different protections, obviously, because they have a responsibility because you're paying. But if they're giving it to you for free, it's like game over. Like they own it. Just like Facebook owns all your stuff. You don't realize that, but all the stuff you post on Facebook, it belongs to them. And you can't keep it, right? So
Yeah.
I would say I trust it as far as the legal agreement, the license agreement says I trust it. Because right now cloud is mixing, right? Cloud, the storage itself is mixed, but if you want full security, you got to have a dedicated cloud that's just for you. You're not sharing a hard drive with some other business that's part of that hard drive, their information, your information. What you want to do too is ideally have a cloud storage that aligns directly with the security requirements for the data in which you're using. The data classification, you want to store your data based on classification, sensitivity. Yeah, good questions. Any other questions? So who's used AI already? Raise your hand. Okay. I'd encourage you guys to dip your toe in that water. Familiarize, read up, because it is a helpful tool, I think. It helps me do my job a lot.
Yeah,
Those rudimentary tasks that you do every day, it can free you from some of that. You had a question, Gabriella?
Yeah, I did. Thank you for the presentation. I was just wondering if anyone in this group or you in particular, Scott, have ran into just a prudent way to add disclaimer to images or a design process, drawings or things like that. I'm just wondering if anyone has ever like landed on what language we might be using as design professionals.
To kind of like protect the proprietary like design, right? Is that what you're kind of talking about? Yeah. That has not come up in our office yet.
I think you don't do that on any of your designs already? I mean, that's not what Gabriella says, sounds like something that we would do already to some of our, like if I'm an engineer and I create a drawing, it's going to have my information or some kind of a watermark or some
Mm.
protection that I made it. It belongs to me, right? It belongs to my company, right?
Yes, and technically copyright
Yeah. Like,
protects us. That said, I worry in particular about the fine line between like, like where does the copyright end? And so
oh, I
like,
see what you're saying. So you're saying you're giving credit to what, the AI versus you?
right,
Oh.
right.
So this would be a good question for general counsel to say, hey, I raised my hand. Do I have to give attribution, I'll say,
mhm.
to the AI that I created this document? Half of it was AI and half of it was me.
Yeah, and I think about, so you're talking about something that's like from the process, right? I'm also thinking about the future of that image, right? Like so much of our output is, let's say, a rendering. Let's say that you input that rendering then into AI, and then it creates a new image of a new drawing of a new iteration, right? Based on our work. And so I think, like you pointed out, one side of the story, and I'm also concerned about the second side of that story. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like for example, are you thinking, I don't know, you have like 5
Okay.
schools you've designed and you're gonna
Mhm.
one, here are 5, like take some amalgamation of these 5 designs and show me what our 6th school might look like, for example.
Right. Like what stops the competition from saying, we want to make a building just like this one, puts in a project of ours, spits
Mhm.
out something else, and then sells that to a client. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I'm trying to figure out whether there's,
So,
some sort of language that we
yeah,
can devise or agree with. Again, totally agree with you that this requires general counsel, right? But
so here's something to think about. So I just, as you were talking, I was listening, I did a query. Using AI to generate a drawing can be a copyright issue. Because under US law, AI is not considered an author and therefore cannot hold copyright over generated artwork. Meaning if the AI creates the majority of the artwork without significant human input, you cannot copyright that. So the key is without significant human input, like what percentage of, right, the work was human versus
sure.
human. It says human authorship is key. You claim copyright over an AI generated work. Significant level of human creativity must be involved in the process, like selecting prompts, manipulating the AI output, or adding substantial artistic elements.
Hmm.
Use
Is
it
there a
as a
link that you can
tool.
share, or could you share your screen so we can all see?
Mhm.
Let's see.
Thank you.
No problem. No problem. So right here, AI gave us an overview. too. So, um,
Actually might be a good segue. I'll take a couple minutes here at the end to ask for those of you here, like what other AI topics would you be interested in learning more about this year? I feel like it sounds like maybe getting a lawyer on one of these sessions would be interesting, just based on the questions that have come up already. And I know that have come up for us internally. Um, I don't know if anyone else has any other thoughts, um, things that keep coming up in your offices that you'd want to hear more about or learn more about.
I think definitely we want to touch on this copyright issue as Gabriella. So,
Yeah.
that's something I personally hadn't thought of. So thank you for bringing that up. It just,
Yeah.
um, and I would argue that probably a lot of the attorneys right now are playing catch up too. Like they might not be aware that this is an issue, but I think some of them are. We just gotta, um, but U.S. Copyright Office has stated that purely AI generated content cannot be copyright protected.
Mm.
Sorry, just to interject
Mm.
your question. I think it would be great if have like a general understanding of what, because it's like a new technology. So what are architecture firms using AI for?
Like an overview.
Like, or I mean, I know renderings and stuff, but I know I'm not sure if people are using it for like schedules or I know in other offices they have been using it for meeting taking notes like internally and stuff like that. But I know
Mhm.
it's like you stated at the beginning, it's been frowned upon by clients. But I'm
Mhm.
just wondering
Yeah,
Well,
what
I
people are
was,
using it for, yeah.
yeah, I was
yeah.
sitting on a phone call with Rosalind earlier this week. And in about 2 minutes, I had the AI print out a project plan for building an architecture project. Gave me an overview, phases, gave me a project timeline with milestones, and it was within like 60 seconds. Gave me the kind of that skeleton, right? Because I didn't give it a bunch of data, but it gave me what it knew about what an architecture building project would look like the basic level. And you could, take it from there. But what I use it for is it gets me started on stuff, it
Yeah, it's
gets
something, yeah.
me
Mhm.
off the writer's block, and then I can, go from there. Matt has a question.
Yeah, I have a questions like I know lots of AI tools or machine is talking about um from text to images, images to images, or text to 3D models. Is that all also have the issue if we just put in some text that we just come up with, or that will be a separated data that we put in because that's not um the other I feel like that's the other way that we use AI as a early phase of design iterations or imaginations. So I was wondering if that case we still have the issue for the data privacy.
Well, it depends on like, so you're talking about like putting in like a description of like what, like these are the
Yeah,
parameters you want your design to meet. It needs to have so many rooms, be built with, I'm kind of making something up, right? Like you're kind of
right.
describing. Yeah,
Well,
I wonder.
Be-
Go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah, and that's a great question. I don't have the full answer. I'll just tell you what I'm thinking about here. When you talk about data privacy, if you're talking about like a person, it's personally identifiable information. Can I use that to identify their identity and to use it for nefarious purposes? So if I apply that concept to these images, can I use that to develop my own version of that and to save myself all the development work that you put in, and I just copy your work and take it and run with it? Those are the kind of issues I'm thinking you're going to run into. But as far as data privacy, if there's no data that needs to be protected, I would argue maybe you don't have a data privacy issue.
Right, like if you, and
Mm,
thinking out loud, like if that description that you're putting into AI doesn't have anything that would identify your client or the project location
mm.
or name or anything like that, right? Like it could
Or
be,
if it's a process, like if you're talking, Matt, are you talking about like a unique process of design or a unique design or
Yeah, because I know lots of
or like a trade
AI,
secret? Yeah.
yeah, is just only used to like the iterations at an early phase, or even we just want to get a really simple furniture models from the text that we
Mhm.
can do it right now. So I was wondering if we just use AI as a tool, just like doing that kind of stuff, if we still have the issue. So, but probably the other way is because those machines or AI model is only web-based for now. So probably there will be another level of issues when we talk about like exchange data or something like that.
Mhm.
Mm.
Good question.
Good questions. I think you've got some subject matter for your next round.
I know.
Rosalind, some really deep. Looks like Andrew has a question, then Jose.
I think Jose's hand was up before mine. I'll go after.
Hey, I was just gonna chime in just around the question around other topics. I think thinking about how we can leverage or utilize AI as kind of a sounding board and thought partner in how we actually communicate architecture, right? Like in terms of like what's the like how do we narrative build around projects? how do we sort of create more language that's accessible and energizes community. And so kind of really thinking, less so as a sort of generative tool, but as this kind of sounding board that allows us to refine and hone our own kind of communications around projects.
That's a great idea. That actually makes me think of, I don't know if you were here at the very beginning, but I mentioned there's a webinar that was part of the Architects COO forum that our CEO shared with some of us. It's on YouTube. I think anyone can get to it. Where it was Jeff Woods, Geoff, I think. Woods, like you'd spell Woods. Let me make sure that's the right. Yeah. And then I think the name of it is the AI driven leader, but he goes through like a pretty clear way of how to use things like ChatGPT as much more than just like a Google search kind of, right? And he even has some examples of, training it to be, to like act as whatever it is, a board or your client or different things. And then like you can practice your presentations, for example, to ChatGPT and say, give me feedback. What would so-and-so think of this presentation? Where would we get hung up in discussion for 20 minutes and go off the rails, right? And it can give you feedback based on that, right? And Jose, it's a really good question, I think, and very thoughtful. And like broadly, how can we all improve how we communicate our architectural ideas and designs? And I wonder if there's a way, just thinking out loud, like you train that model somehow to be like whoever your target audience is, right? Whether it's a community, a school, or your client, whatever user.
Yeah, and even engaging like partners and users and stakeholders, et cetera, and like collecting the data, right? Like using community engagement as an opportunity to really think about like what data can we collect in this exchange that can shape and inform this tool that allows us to sort of bridge the gaps in communication, because architects and designers speak architecture and community members don't speak architecture. And we're sort of, constantly in this sort of like loop of bad engagement, in part because it's just a matter of like translation.
Yeah.
And so, using engagement not just as a moment to sort of learn community ideas, but to understand how communities communicate and to sort of train language learning models to be more attuned to sort of the nuances there.
Yeah.
And help us distill ideas in ways that are then easier to digest and sort of be processed,
Make it more accessible and like relatable. And yeah, I could see, like, for example, I know on, school projects, there's usually a lot of community engagement at the very beginning and like gathering ideas from, students, teachers, parents, the community at large. And like, I could see how you could take all that information that you gather and kind of train a model based on that and then start saying like, hey, what, evaluate our 3 design options based on, the criteria that we developed out of our educational visioning process, right? And I'd be very curious to see. And then you can kind of do, like with this, in this presentation that webinar, you can then kind of do a test of like, you've trained this model, you got some feedback from it, and then you go and actually do that presentation and see what your real life feedback is, and then put that back into the model and kind of refine the training of it. And I don't know, it's very thought provoking. We have not done anything with this, but the idea of this is very interesting to me. So yeah, that could be a very, very cool topic. All right. And yeah, sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go now. My question is, I guess, sort of branching off of that previous one, particularly on the ethical aspect of AI integration, particularly around in our like images and renderings that we do, and if we want to like, use sort of text to video instruction or image instruction of like add entourage, add people into sort of this view, doing it and such. I'm just curious, like if that potentially could sort of open us up to, it more, I guess, risk basically, right? Or some non-ethical use of, people's likeness and such. Because we don't, if it's just like an online tool that's, sourcing information just from from the general internet, it'll be hard to maybe sort of validate where all that information is coming from, right? So I don't know if that's something we need to be concerned about, or if that is sort of one of the risk points that we should consider.
Yeah, I think it is, and you're right to bring that up. In particular, I think the word transparency at the front of any time you're using this would be paramount. That's going to save you a lot of by clearly informing viewers ahead of time that you're using the AI to generate that. That keeps you out of a little bit of trouble, and then explain how the limitations, how the AI works, and to build that trust. I think that's a good start. And then use a wide range of data sources.
Yeah.
Start with, that's going to eliminate the bias that you potentially have, because we all have it. It's just a natural byproduct of our own development, our own socialization. So we
Right.
want to keep really watch that. And then have somebody else review it too, like have somebody who's not you look at it and say, hey, does this make sense to you? And you're like, no. Have you thought about this? Okay. And that's how because that collaboration really gives us a better quality result, I think. Jose, do you still have a question, or is your hand just up from before? Oh, okay. He's good.
Yeah, it was just left it out hanging. Sorry.
Yeah, and then he left. I was like, oh, okay. Sorry.
All right. Well, I know we're past one. Thank you guys for hanging on. And Scott, thank you for staying past one.
I hope that was helpful.
Yeah.
It's like I said, if you have questions, or just feel free to reach out to Rosalind or myself. I would go through Rosalind, and we can kind of try to develop, what's the next go around. I hope it was informative. Enjoyed meeting you all and presenting this important information. You gave me a lot of things to take away and think about. So I thank you for that as well, and educating me on some things. So thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye.